Future Proof is sponsored by Equipping Young Adults for Life, inspiring student resilience, championing hope.
Hello and welcome back from the break. Thank you for joining me, Sarah Hopwood, with this series of Future Proof where we're looking at education and really trying to help and empower students in this uncertain world. But of course, much of what we do for problem solving, and today I'm covering self-worth and life skills, actually goes right across the board. And certainly what I'm sharing with you today is what helped me some years ago. So in the first half, I was talking about a lady, I just nominated the name Jennifer, that is not her name, who really had some self-worth issues, and she'd made some serious mistakes in her life. And I took her back to when she was born and asked her to imagine a ward of 4 babies, and I described each baby in different ways. They all looked and appeared differently, and for each child, no matter what they were, who they were, she gave everyone a 10 out of 10, including herself. But when I asked her, what mark will you give yourself now, she had given herself a 3 out of 10, which to me was quite shocking. It's the lowest I've heard anybody actually, if you like, mark themselves now. She listed all the mistakes that she's made in her life, but it still made me ask another question, why? Why is it the number? Why is it 3? Why is it so low? And she remembered back to being scolded as a child, and the belief that she had, this is all about beliefs, that she was then damaged from that scold. So I took her back to the reasons why she'd given all these babies 10 out of 10 had nothing to do with rights or wrongs or anything else. She had based it on the fact that they are living, breathing human beings. And I related that back to her, and I said, well, if you're a 10 out of 10 when you were born, then based on this criteria, you should still be a 10 out of 10 now. And just going into the break, I said to you that very often we will live to the self-worth that we have. So in other words, she had a self-worth of 3 out of 10, so she was living to a 3 out of 10. And once we helped her get to a place of believing that she's an 8, a 9 and a 10 out of 10, then she made much better and smarter decisions. And here is a £10 note. We're all familiar with money, and I think to sum up this phase, if you like, is to say, if I screw this up and if I trample on it and throw it in the bin, if I pick it out the bin and bring it back, even though it is scrunched and crumbled, sometimes we feel we are beaten up, we are binned, we either bin ourselves or we actually feel sometimes other people are doing it. But when you get it out and open it back up, it is still a £10 note. And here, this is what I mean. She is still a 10 out of 10. And moving forward, she just needs to make smarter decisions. So I talked about Stephen Covey and I talked about the rocks, saying that I had talked about this, it was actually in City College Brighton, and one of the mums of one of the students, I actually spoke to the new students, new cohorts, and we had their parents in, and this parent in particular said to me that I'd really helped her, and she was wagging her finger at me and she said, I'm going to start living to a 10 out of 10, and it was so inspiring to hear. But once we decide, not a but, and, or however, once we decide that's what we're going to do, we then have to think, well, how are we going to make smarter decisions? And I talked about Stephen Covey, and Stephen Covey is fantastic. If you he's the famous book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and there is one for teenagers in reverse psychology, by the way. But he also talks about, we call it Covey's Rocks. And I did this demonstration in City College. So I got a big glass see-through container, and under the counter, the students couldn't see, I had all of what I'm going to talk about now. And this is how it worked. And I'm going to take you to the lesson that Stephen Covey wants us all to learn. And it's not the obvious this lesson that most of us think. So first of all, I got out some rocks, and I asked somebody, a volunteer, to come up and fill the container. So they got the rocks and they literally put them in the container. This isn't going to look right, and some physics is going to look at this. Somebody from the physics world is going to look and say this doesn't look right. But anyway, they filled up the glass bowl with rocks. A physicist is what I'm trying to say there. So I then asked the question, is it full? And to begin with, because people were just getting used to it, they then, generally speaking, they said yes. So the first time of asking, they said yes. So I then got out some pebbles, and I then put some, let's find another colour, and then I got to ask for a volunteer, and they put the pebbles in, and the pebbles kind of fell between the rocks. Again, a physicist will say this doesn't quite look right, it wouldn't work like that, but I think you get my drift. And I'm not going to finish all of them because I want to make sure I get this all in time. So then I asked, is it full? And of course then the students were going, well, possibly, but I think we're going somewhere with this. So they then said no. And then, I pulled out some sand and I asked for a volunteer, and somebody then poured some sand in, and I can't actually do that very well without wasting a lot of time, but I think you get my feeling if I literally just kind of do dots around here, that the sand obviously fell between the pebbles and the stones and filled it. And I then said, is it full? And then we weren't sure, the room was divided. And so I then got out some water and asked for a volunteer, and the volunteer filled it up with water, and I then said, is it full? And of course they said yes, and it's right, it is yes. But as an extra piece, which I kind of added to it, I actually had some shells. And so I got some really, and I haven't got the colours here, but I got some pretty shells out, and I put them and I lay them across the top. But then here is the question. I said to the room, this is Stephen Covey's rocks. And I said, what is his lesson? What is it that he's saying? And the most common answer came from the room. And a few people put their hands up and they said, the lesson is, you think that your life is full, but actually it's amazing what else you can get in your life. And I said, no, that's not Covey's lesson. So we went round the room again, and people were getting close to it, but they didn't quite get to it. And so I'm going to share with you now the lesson that Covey was teaching here. So this is all in line with, once we feel that we can get ourselves feeling like a 10 out of 10, we need to make some smarter decisions. And Covey's rocks helped us do that. And the lesson is this. If you don't get the rocks in first, then you will never get them in. So if you put the shingle, the sand, the water, you will never get the rocks in once you filled it up with all of this. And then we had the debate of, what are your rocks then? What could your rocks be? And usually they are relationship based. Maybe you're not seeing enough of people that you love. Maybe it's around self-care, perhaps exercise, gym, eating the right things. It could be about learning. You feel that you're wasting your time, so you're perhaps not reading as much as you should. Or it could be that you actually have a passion, you have a great hobby and a passion for travelling or for music, and you just keep allowing it to be squeezed out, where you want to make a decision to nominate, for example, joining a choir, one of your rocks. And if you get the rocks in first, then you can get all the rest in around it if you want to. I'm not suggesting a busy life. I think stillness and quietness and, mindfulness, all that stuff is incredibly important. So Covey's rocks, can I commend him to you? Do Google him, read up on him. If you make smarter decisions about who you are and where you're going, it could be actually a rock, could actually be a core value. It could be, from now I'm going to stop telling lies. I've been lying so much, I've actually been dumbing down my own conscience. I'm not even picking up now when I'm telling a lie because I keep telling lies so often. It could be something like that. Honesty, integrity, loyalty. You could actually have a core value that you make as a rock. And if you get that in, get some ideas, supporting actions to make sure that it helps you stay over the line. So in other words, you take the decision away and you start creating good habits. That will then feed your confidence and feed your self-esteem, which will allow you to get towards or stay, if you're already there, feeling as if you're a 10 out of 10. And the last thing on it is, if you want to be a perfect human being, then remember, by definition, you have to be perfect at mucking it up. So please don't beat yourself up. And as I said, just as we opened up, a £10 note is a £10 note. You are a breathing human being with a heart and a soul. Yes, we sometimes get battered and bruised and broken, but that never ever stops us, or this being a £10 note, or for us to be a 10 out of 10. So be inspired, be